Okay, this video is going to go over assembly and attachment of a JEFA Tech UHF male connector, part number C400UHF. This is it's actually a 3-part connector, but it comes in the package in 2 distinct parts. This is your ferrule, which will be crimping on at the end, and this is your main body with a gold center pin that you're going to solder, Teflon insulator, and your body. This does separate, so it is actually a 3-part connector, but we normally leave it completely pretty much assembled there during assembly. I'll show you. Okay, so this is an RG-213 cable. This connector will fit any .400 inch diameter cable, so 0.400 inch roughly cable. So that would include a low loss 400 or like an LMR 400, an RG-213, RG-8. This size of cable, this connector will fit. So let's get to it. So a heat shrink is not included in the package with the connector, but if you have some heat shrink, like a 1/2 inch size heat shrink, put that down on your cable first. Next part is your ferrule. You're just gonna slip it over top of the cable jacket, send it down out of the way, and we'll deal with it later. Okay, if you have a strip tool, highly recommended. Set up your strip tool with two blades. It comes with 3. You're going to set it up with 2. There they are. With a separation, you can kind of see there in the video. One is here in this slot, and one is in that slot. Basically, the width between them is approximately the width of the ferrule that I just put on. Maybe a little bit shorter than the width, but that's generally the case. Okay, I'm going to go over this. If you don't have one of these, you can accomplish the same with a nice sharp razor knife and do your separate cuts. But I'll go through the cuts that this is going to do so you can get an idea. So your first cut, you're going to make this, you're going to be revealing the center conductor from about here out, and you want it longer than you need because we're going to trim it at the end. So maybe like 1.5 inches or so. Right there is where I'm going to place the end of this, where this main blade will go. All right, so we're going to use this, go around, and that's going to cut it for us. Again, if you don't have that, use a razor knife and do this first section first, all the way down to the center conductor. Best way to get this off, if this is a stranded cable, you can rock it a little bit to break it. If it is a solid core cable, like a low loss 400 or an LMR 400, do not do this motion because you will weaken the joint right here with the solid center conductor. So don't rock it. If it's a stranded, like this RG-213, it's okay, you're not gonna hurt it. But solid core, don't do that. It's just like a paper clip. If you take a paper clip back and forth, you're gonna weaken it. Okay, so once you do that, the best way to remove this, use like some needle nose, like some large size needle nose pliers. Grab it directly on like this, give it a twist and pull. So twist in a clockwise direction, and see I'm pulling out at this same time. Takes a couple rounds and eventually it's going to pop loose. Okay, the jacket's going to come off. And then this dielectric is going to twist off. Be sure to twist in a clockwise in the same direction as your strands if it's a stranded cable, so you don't unwind the strands. You actually want to tighten the strands, not loosen them. Okay, there we are. So this would also represent your first cut if you're just using a razor knife instead of the stripper that I used. Okay, this is what it looks like first. Your next is going to be to remove this jacket. So again, if this is a knife, just using a knife, my stripper's already done it, but just using a knife, all you're doing is cutting down through the black jacket, no further. Don't cut into the braids. Now that you have this, you're gonna do a score in this direction, just deep enough to cut the jacket. This blade's a little dull, so that's where I'm at. having to go a couple times. All right, and then you're gonna be able to grab it and peel it away. Okay, there we are. And I'm gonna fan this out just a little bit. Okay, and then inspect here if you have any fragments of your copper braid. So you wanna just use a brush or something and make sure you're clean there so you don't have any contamination that might short the connection. Okay, next step. This ferrule that you push down, you're gonna bring it up in your hand. This connector, you're gonna slip over top, and over here, what you wanna do is go about halfway. Put it on, don't fully seat it down yet, about halfway. You know what, I am going to remove this just so you can get a better view. So this just simply unscrews. If you decide to unscrew it during your assembly, just make sure you get it on, put it down on the cable. It has to go on first. Put it in the right direction. That's the end with this lip is what goes down first. So this is the thread end, the lip end goes down first. Okay, here, this will let you get a better view of what I'm doing. I've got to move my ferrule back up. Okay, clean this up a bit. This also has kind of a cup to it. You want this cup up towards you. Go down about halfway. Push your braids up a bit. Push your ferrule up. This should sandwich the braids in between the ferrule and the body. Now go the rest of the way of pushing this in. Fully seated in. And then you can pop it out. You can see the braids have fit up in here. The reason for doing it this way is so you don't have braids sticking out this way. Now, once you've gotten this far, you are going to use some type of cutter, and you're going to slip it over here, and you're going to cut the center conductor. Okay, you're going to cut it off flush. This is fully pushed down now. It is on, and you're going to cut it flush. Now that you have cut this flush, you're going to move the ferrule and the connector out just a touch so that you still want it there, but you're just moving it away from the edge. Okay? That is your preparation here. Now, you're going to take your crimper. This is required. This is absolutely a required tool for this connector. You need a crimper with a .429 die. Okay, that's this one in the middle, .429. Okay, this is going to crimp. So I'm going to open my crimper up, and I'm going to fit it in the die just to the ferrule part and crimp that down. And I'm going to get both sides. Okay, this is fully attached now. This type of a crimp connection is a much more solid, robust, even connection than a soldered connection. We've done extensive testing, and this always wins. So this is easier to do as well as being a better connection. Okay, here is your prepared end. So what is left here is to solder this. So I have a small vise. And I'm going to show you the solder technique. Okay, so what you're going to do, you want to wet your tip. You're going to put this in the gap. So I wet both sides. So now this is heating the pin of the connector, and it's also starting to heat the braids of the cable. And now it's hot enough. You're going to flow your solder in. So I won't get into solder training so much in this you just need to make sure it's flowing, that you're not doing a cold solder joint. Do your best to keep the solder inside and not getting on the outside of the connector. And you're gonna flow this in. See, it's starting to fill in. At this point, I normally release it, allow it to cool and solidify, and then add a second round. The solder is flowing. What you're not seeing is the solder is flowing down inside the connector at this point. And you can see this solder that we use has flux built in. If you don't have a solder with flux, you would want to do a flux application prior to soldering. So that's why I did not do that, because the solder that we use is meant for this purpose and it has the flux inside. Okay, that's generally it. I could have made that end a little smoother, but it's okay. It's totally functional. At this point, this part is also very important. You need to clean this up. You need to clean your solder flux off of here. So you want to use, we have an alcohol bottle, so you need to use isopropyl alcohol, like a 90% or higher. We put it on a brush. Absolutely required that you do this. Clean this flux. You might not see it, but there is residue, flux residue on here. And then we also use like a paper towel that I just dipped in that solder. And you want to just take it and wipe it and clean it off. Again, if you don't take off your solder flux residue, you should be using flux. You have to remove it at the end. If you don't, it will leave a film on here which will actually impede the connection. Even though you can't visibly see it, you could probably feel it. It feels sticky. Anyway, all right, I'm gonna remove this from the vise and I'm gonna show you the completion. So I had pulled this body piece down. I'm gonna twist it back on. And there you go. If you had put some heat shrink on, now's your time to put that back up and you can heat shrink it. But there is your completed UHF male, or you could say PL-259 type connector. There's a little flux that I left. See, I didn't complete my inspection of it. I didn't look at the back end. But basically, I'm gonna continue to take this brush and pull this flux off the back. And then after this, you do your testing and finishing. And okay, there you go. This is how to attach this JEFA Tech C400UHF connector to your cable. Thank you. Have a great day.